Last Sunday, my mother-in-law slid a manila envelope across the dinner table, looked at my husband, and said, "I think you need to see this." She had secretly run a DNA test on our 3-year-old daughter. She expected the results to destroy my marriage. What she didn't expect was that those same results would destroy her instead. But here is what none of them knew. Not my husband, not his sister, not even his father. I had found out about that test 2 weeks before that dinner. And what I did during those 2 weeks changed everything. My name is Daniela Atwood. I am 32 years old. And I need to take you back 7 years to the day I first met Patricia Atwood. I was 25. Marco and I had been dating 4 months. He took me to his parents' house on a Saturday in October, and his mother opened the door like she was receiving a legal deposition. No hug, a handshake, firm, deliberate, and eyes that were already scanning me from hairline to shoes before I had finished saying hello. The first 30 minutes were fine. Pot roast, light conversation, Ernesto telling a story about rewiring the garage. Normal enough. But then Patricia steered the conversation to where she steered everything, quietly and with purpose. "Daniela, where did you grow up?" I told her. "Bridgeport. A small apartment. My mother was a pediatric nurse." "And your father?" I set my fork down. "He left when I was 6. Patricia nodded slowly. She touched the pearl earring at her left ear, a small, studied gesture I would come to see 1,000 times over the next 7 years. She turned it once between her thumb and index finger, then smiled. "That must have been difficult." She said it the way people say interesting when they actually mean noted. Later in the car, Marco told me she had liked me. I said, "Oh good." He laughed. I didn't. What I had noticed that evening, and filed away without fully understanding, was how much Patricia needed to know where things came from. Not just me. Everything. She asked Marco about the wine, where it had been made, who had recommended it. She inspected the label before pouring. She was a woman who traced origins. I didn't know then that this quality would one day be turned against my daughter. But I remember thinking, this is someone who keeps count. Marco and I married the following June. Small ceremony, 40 guests, outdoor, near the Connecticut coast. My mother flew in from Arizona. Patricia wore cream, which my maid of honor called a power move. I didn't care. I was marrying a good man. The first year was quiet. We rented a house in Milford, 40 minutes from Patricia and Ernesto. Close enough for the holidays. Far enough to breathe. Except that Patricia didn't believe in space for breathing. She arrived unannounced, Tuesdays mostly, sometimes Thursdays, using the spare key we had given her for emergencies to reorganize whatever was within reach. The spice rack. The coat closet. Once she reorganized my linen closet and left a note. Towels by color. Easier to find. I thanked her. Marco said that was just how she was. Courtney, Marco's younger sister, visited on weekends. She was 24 at the time, still living with Patricia, still orbiting her mother like a satellite with no trajectory of its own. Every visit ended the same way. Courtney would leave, and by that same afternoon Patricia would call Marco with observations about our house, our meals, our plans. I said nothing. I was new to the family, still learning the rules. One Thanksgiving, Patricia raised her glass. "To Marco," she said. She looked around the table. Ernesto, Courtney, Aunt Margot, Uncle Dennis, and then her eyes landed on me for exactly 1 second. Marco could have had anyone. She paused. Anyone. The table laughed. I smiled. Somewhere inside my chest, a small and precise instrument made its first measurement. Lily was born on a Wednesday in March, 2 years after our wedding. She arrived crying, which the nurse said was a good sign. She had dark hair, almost black. Patricia held her in the hospital room and said, "She looks exactly like Marco as a baby." There was warmth in that. Real warmth. For a moment I thought, maybe this is what connects us. That moment lasted approximately 6 months. At 6 months, Lily's hair began to change. Not all at once, strand by strand, the way autumn arrives. The dark brown lightened to copper red. The copper red deepened to bright copper. And by her first birthday, My daughter had a full head of strawberry red curls that caught the light like small flames. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. My mother had the same hair. Her grandmother before her. The genetics weren't a mystery to me. But Patricia didn't see genetics. She saw a problem. How curious, she said at Lily's birthday party, holding a curl between two fingers the way someone holds material evidence. Red hair. She looked at Marco, then at me, then back at Marco. Where does that come from? I explained. A recessive gene from my mother's side. It skips generations sometimes. Patricia smiled with a pearl earring smile. Interesting. Because red hair doesn't exist in the Atwood family. She said it lightly, the way you mention a crack in a foundation. Not alarming. Just something that perhaps should be looked into. Nobody at the party responded. But I heard it, and I knew with the certainty of someone who reads behavioral patterns as part of her job that she had been thinking about it for a while. I am an occupational therapist. I spend my days with children who cannot tell me what is wrong. I learned to read what the body does instead of what the mouth says. I had been reading Patricia Atwood for 2 years. I knew exactly what that smile meant. Over the following year, the comments became routine. Not at every visit, but often enough. She looks so unique. Nobody in our family has that color. Do you have Irish relatives? Maybe that explains it. I started keeping count. 14 comments in 6 months. I wrote the dates in a small notebook I kept in my nightstand drawer, a professional habit. I document everything. Behavioral patterns, motor milestones, sensory triggers. Documentation is how I make sense of the world. Courtney amplified the campaign from her own channel. She posted a photo of Lily on Instagram, red curls, green romper, standing in Patricia's garden with the caption, "She looks so unique. Wonder where she gets that from." Smiling emoji. 1,400 reactions. I showed it to Marco. He shrugged. Courtney's always been like that. The extended family began looking at me differently. Dennis, Ernesto's brother, avoided eye contact at gatherings. Cousin Eli, who had always been warm, stopped texting. And Aunt Margot, Patricia's older sister, started watching me the way you watch someone you're waiting to catch. Nothing was said out loud. That was the point. Patricia wasn't building a case with words. She was building it with silences. The kind of silence that fills a room with suspicion the same way smoke fills a house before anyone sees the flames. The incident with the sippy cup happened on a Tuesday in April. Marco had a job meeting 2 hours north. I had a late shift at the hospital. A 7-year-old with a spinal injury needed extra session time, and I couldn't say no. Patricia offered to watch Lily. I dropped her off at 10 in the morning. I packed her bag carefully. Snacks, diapers, her stuffed elephant, and the green sippy cup she had been using since 18 months. When I went to pick up Lily at 6, the cup was gone. "Oh, that old thing," Patricia said. I threw it out. It looked worn. It wasn't worn. I had bought it 3 weeks earlier. I didn't argue. I thanked her. I put Lily in her car seat and we drove home. But something else had caught my attention that afternoon. When I crossed through Patricia's kitchen to get Lily's jacket from the counter, I saw a small clear plastic bag on the table. The kind used for storing snacks. Or evidence. Patricia moved quickly. She grabbed it and put it in a drawer before I could read the label. "Just organizing," she said. And on the desk in the hallway, partially visible behind a stack of mail, I saw a thick manila envelope, sealed, with a return address I couldn't read clearly. That night, I didn't connect anything. The cup, the bag, the envelope. They were pieces of a puzzle with no picture yet. I came home, bathed Lily, read her a story, fell asleep. But the part of me trained to detect patterns in children who can't tell me what's wrong, that part was already working. 3 weeks later, my phone rang while I was between patients. I was sitting in the therapy room cleaning the rubber grips on a hand exercise kit. The number was local. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Mrs. Atwood? This is Carla from Geneva Laboratory. I'm calling to confirm we received a sample for analysis under your daughter's name, Lily Atwood, age 3. I set the grip down on the table. I didn't submit any sample. The request was made under the name Patricia Atwood. She identified herself as the child's grandmother. However, Our policy requires parental consent for testing minors. We have placed the test on hold pending your authorization. Would you like to proceed or cancel? Cancel. My hands were trembling when I hung up. My voice had not wavered. It never does when it matters. Something I learned from my mother, who spent 28 years delivering difficult news to parents about their children's health and never once raised her voice. I sat in the therapy room for 4 minutes. I stared at the poster on the wall showing the muscles of the hand, flexors, abductors, opponents. I let the technical knowledge center me. Then I picked up my phone and called a family law attorney. Her name was Raquel. She had been practicing family law for 14 years out of a small office in New Haven. She had a reputation for being direct. I told her everything. The comments, the cup, the lab call. She listened without interrupting, which in my line of work is the sign of someone who is actually paying attention. When I finished, she leaned back. Under Connecticut law, a grandmother cannot authorize genetic testing on a minor without the express written consent of a parent or legal guardian. Full stop. So what she did is illegal. It is a violation of your daughter's privacy rights and potentially actionable in civil court. It may also violate the terms of service of the testing company, which could expose Patricia to liability as well. She falsified the consent on the submission form. A pause. We'll find out. Then, in the meantime, do not confront her. Do not tell your husband. I looked at her. Why not? Because if you tell Marco, he will call his mother. She will cry, apologize, and ask him to keep it in the family. The pattern will repeat. If you want this to actually stop, if you want it to stop for good, you need to let her play her hand. I paid the consultation fee. It was the best money I had ever spent. I called the lab on my way out. I asked them to confirm the sample had been canceled and to flag any future request involving Lily Atwood without my written authorization. Then I picked up Lily from preschool. She ran to me in the doorway with her arms out wide, red curls everywhere. I held her and thought, nobody is taking anything from us. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I searched Connecticut consent laws for DNA testing of minors. The results confirmed what Raquel had told me. Parental consent required. A grandmother had no legal authority to authorize genetic testing on a grandchild. Then I searched consumer DNA testing kits, the genealogy platforms, the ones that advertise family connections and ancestry discoveries. This is where it got more complicated. Clinical labs like Geneva had strict consent protocols. That's why they called me. But consumer platforms had easier checkbox systems. I am the parent or legal guardian.
Click. Submit.
I opened Patricia's Facebook page. She rarely posted, but Courtney tagged her constantly. Family dinners, photos of Lily. I scrolled back. In February, Courtney had shared an article titled, "What DNA Reveals About Your Family, The Surprising Connections Home Tests Uncover." Patricia had commented, "Very interesting." I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder on my desktop labeled documentation. Then I opened my nightstand notebook, the one where I had been recording Patricia's comments about Lily's hair. 14 entries over 6 months. I added one more. April 14th. Geneva Laboratory confirmed sample submitted under Patricia Atwood without parental consent. I closed the notebook. Marco was already asleep. I wanted to wake him. I wanted to show him everything. But Raquel's words kept circling in my mind. Let her play her hand. So I turned off the lamp and waited. On the 5th day, I caught a break. I went to Patricia's house to pick up a pair of Lily's shoes. She had left there the previous weekend. Patricia was out, a hair appointment, Courtney told me when she opened the door. Courtney was in the living room on a video call, phone propped against a stack of books, talking to someone I couldn't see. I walked toward the entry room, where the shoes were. The house was quiet except for Courtney's voice, which was always louder than necessary. Mom already has the results. She's going to do it at Sunday dinner in front of everyone. I stopped. I had Lily's left shoe in my hand. She's been planning it for weeks. She says once Marco sees the test, he won't be able to ignore it. The voice on the other end said something I couldn't hear. Courtney laughed. I know, right? This is going to be insane. I picked up the second shoe. I walked back through the living room. Courtney saw me and cut the call immediately. "Oh, hey. Just catching up with a friend." I smiled. "No problem. Just grabbing Lily's shoes. Say hi to Marco for me." I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, placed the shoes on the passenger seat, put both hands on the steering wheel, and pushed until my knuckles went white. Now I knew three things. When Sunday, where the dinner table, who was watching, everyone. Patricia had built a stage, chosen her audience, rehearsed her lines, and believed with total conviction that the results would say what she wanted them to say. I started the engine. I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to let her light the match. The fire would find its own way back. On the 7th day, I found Jamie. Not intentionally. Not at first. I was trying to understand how Patricia's submission to the consumer DNA platform had worked, the one she had used alongside the clinical lab. I created my own account on the same service, submitted my own sample, and spent an afternoon reading about how the family matching algorithms functioned. What I learned changed everything. When you submit DNA to one of these platforms, the system doesn't just run a paternity test. It scans the entire database for relatives, siblings, cousins, half-cousins. Anyone who shares enough markers with your sample is flagged as a possible match. Patricia had submitted Lily's DNA. That meant Lily's profile was now cross-referenced with every other profile in the system. I logged into the account Patricia had created. She had used a password that Courtney had once mentioned in passing. Lily's birthday. Of course. And there, under possible family matches in Lily's profile, was a name I had never seen. Jamie M., age 36, Portland, Oregon. Estimated relationship, half-uncle or equivalent. I stared at the screen. Half-uncle meant one thing. Jamie shared a biological parent with either Marco or me. Since I had no biological connection to the platform's test, the match had to come from Marco's side, which meant either Ernesto had a secret child or Patricia did. I took a screenshot, saved it to the documentation folder, and emailed it to Raquel. The next morning Raquel called. "If this match is accurate, it means someone in the Atwood bloodline has a biological connection to this man that they haven't disclosed. Or that Patricia has that connection," I said. She was the one who submitted the test. Raquel was quiet for a moment. "Then we need to find out who Jamie M. is." Jamie Miguel Callahan. Born June 1990. Portland, Oregon. Adopted at birth through a private agency in Hartford, Connecticut. It took me 2 nights to find this. The platform had limited public information, but Jamie had activated the Open to Contact feature on his profile. His bio said, "Adoptee searching for biological family. Open to conversation." I did not contact him. That wasn't my right, but I did the math. Born 1990. Patricia would have been 25. She and Ernesto married in 1992 when she was 27. Marco was also born in 1992. Patricia had given a child up for adoption before her marriage and had never told anyone, except possibly the one person who had been sitting at every family dinner watching me with careful eyes. Aunt Margot. Because when I looked at the shared match report on Jamie's DNA profile more closely, I noticed something. The platform listed shared matches, other profiles that both Jamie and Lily connected to. One of them was labeled Margarita R., possible aunt or half-aunt. Margot's middle name was Ruth. Margarita Ruth. Margot knew. She had known for 36 years. I sat at my kitchen table and thought about Patricia. Not with anger.
Not yet.
I thought about a 25-year-old woman, unmarried, probably terrified, making a decision that would follow her for the rest of her life. I understood that kind of fear. I had been raised watching my mother make impossible decisions. But understanding a decision and forgiving the lie that follows it are different things. Patricia hadn't just given a child up for adoption. She had buried that truth so deeply that she had convinced herself the only threat to her family's bloodline was me. She was afraid of being exposed. And she had turned that fear into a weapon pointed at my daughter. The Sunday dinner invitation arrived on Thursday. Patricia called. Her voice was bright, too bright. The particular brightness that comes from rehearsal. "Big family dinner this Sunday. I want everyone there. Tell Ernesto to invite Dennis." I said, "We'll be there." On Friday, I printed the screenshots, organized my documentation folder, dates, events, evidence, lab confirmation, platform login records, the family match report for Jamie M. I made a cloud backup and sent copies to Raquel. Raquel responded, "If she does it, if she presents the test publicly, that strengthens your position in any civil action. You'll have witnesses." I know. Are you sure you want to proceed? You could confront her privately. End this before Sunday. I'm sure. Saturday night, I gave Lily her bath. She was sitting in the tub splashing water, her copper curls wet and dark against her neck. I worked the shampoo gently through the ringlets. She looked up at me. "Mama, why does Grandma Patricia always touch my hair?" I stopped. My 3-year-old had already noticed. "Because your hair is beautiful, sweetheart. It's magical hair. The most magical of all." I smiled, finished her bath, dressed her in her pajamas, read her the Caterpillar book. She fell asleep holding my thumb. Marco came in. "Mom seems really excited about Sunday. I wonder what's happening." I looked at my husband. Kind face, tired eyes, a good man who had spent his entire life believing his mother was exactly who she said she was. "I guess we'll find out," I said. That night I lay awake and ran through every possible scenario. In every version, the truth came to light. The only variable was how much it would cost. Sunday morning, I dressed carefully. Ivory sweater, soft, nothing loud. Dark jeans. The small gold necklace Marco gave me on our first anniversary. No armor. No war tools. Just me. Lily wore a blue dress with white flowers. She spun twice in front of the hallway mirror before I caught her. Marco loaded the car. 40 minutes north. Classical music on the radio. Lily fell asleep before we reached the highway. I watched Marco's hands on the wheel. Strong, capable hands. He built things for a living, houses, structures, things designed to bear weight. I thought, today those hands will either hold mine or let go. We arrived at Patricia's driveway at 4:15. 3 cars were already there. Ernesto's truck, Courtney's car, and a silver sedan I recognized as Margot's. The house was full. Patricia met us at the door. She hugged Marco long and firm, the kind of hug a mother gives when she's about to do something she believes is righteous. She gave me a brief, efficient nod. "Take Lily upstairs. She can sleep in the guest room." I carried Lily up, laid her on the bed, smoothed a blanket over her legs, her copper curls spread across the white pillow. I went back downstairs. The family was assembled. Ernesto in his usual chair by the window. Dennis beside him. Courtney on the sofa, phone in hand, leg bouncing. Eli arranging napkins. Margot near the sideboard, arms crossed, mouth tight. And on the hallway table, exactly where I had seen it 2 weeks earlier, the thick sealed manila envelope, waiting. Patricia caught me looking at it. She smiled with the pearl earring smile.
"Dinner first," she said.
The roast was good. I'll give Patricia that. She was always an excellent cook, one of the few things about her that wasn't a performance. Ernesto told a fishing story. Dennis laughed. Eli complimented the sauce. Normal sounds, normal dinner. But I was watching the currents beneath the surface. Courtney checked her phone every 30 seconds, not texting, just checking the time. She had a countdown. Margot held her fork the way some people grip a bridge railing. Firm eyes, looking straight ahead. She barely ate. Patricia presided at the head of the table, smiling at everyone, asking Dennis about his new truck, refilling Ernesto's water, performing calm with the technical perfection of someone who has been to rehearsal. Disciplinary news in the elementary school, where she had spent 30 years as principal. "It's a DNA test," she said. For Lily. The room contracted. I could feel it. The walls coming closer, the air thinning. Ernesto spoke first. "Patricia, what in the hell have you done?" She didn't look at him. She looked at me. "No offense, Daniela, but this family deserves the truth." Marco spoke. His voice was low. "What truth?" She turned back to him. "I had Lily tested privately because I love this family. Because that child," she pointed toward the ceiling, toward the room where our daughter slept, "doesn't look like anyone." Courtney leaned forward. Margot stared at her plate. Patricia's voice rose half a pitch. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Red hair does not exist in the Atwood family. And I believe Marco has the right to know whether that child is actually his. The sentence landed on the table like a brick through a window. Dennis looked at his hands. Eli's mouth opened and closed. Ernesto gripped the armrest of his chair. Marco stared at the envelope. His hands were still, but his jaw moved in the way it moves when he is choosing between silence and something irreversible. Open it, Patricia said again. She was smiling. She truly, deeply believed the contents of that envelope would prove her right. She was wrong. Marco picked up the envelope, broke the seal, pulled out a stack of papers, 5 or 6 printed sheets on laboratory letterhead. He read the first page in silence. 15 seconds passed. Maybe 20. Long enough for Patricia to shift her weight from one foot to the other. Long enough for Courtney to stop breathing. Marco looked up. He looked at Patricia. She's mine. Patricia blinked. What? Probability of paternity. 99.998%. He held up the page. Lily is my daughter. The smile on Patricia's face didn't fall. It fractured, like ice on a windshield, still in place but no longer holding. That can't be right. She reached for the papers. Marco pulled them back.
No.
You've done enough. Courtney, maybe the lab made an error. Marco turned to her. Quiet, Courtney. Courtney sat back as if she had been struck. In 34 years, Marco had never spoken to her like that. The table understood. Something had shifted in him. A door that had been left ajar his whole life had just closed. Patricia's hand went to the pearl earring. The gesture I had watched 1,000 times. Her anchor. There must be a mistake. The hair color. It doesn't make sense. Marco set the papers on the table. He looked at me for the first time since Patricia had stood up. I had been sitting at the far end of the table the entire time. Still, hands folded in my lap. Watching. Now it was my turn. The results are correct, Patricia. My voice was calm. The same tone I use when a parent asks me if their child will ever walk normally.
Clear.
Steady. Carrying more weight than its volume suggests. I know because the lab called me 2 weeks ago. They needed to verify parental consent, the consent you never obtained. The room shifted. Not a sound of vibration. The kind felt in the floor before a train arrives. Ernesto leaned forward. You tested our granddaughter, without permission. Patricia lifted her chin. I was protecting this family. My voice remained even. Under Connecticut law, a grandmother cannot authorize genetic testing on a minor without the written consent of the parents. Your attorney can explain the specifics. Mine already did. I said it the way I write my patient progress notes. Factual, chronological, no adjectives. Patricia's face went through 3 colors in quick succession. Pink, red, white. Her hand dropped from the earring. But the lab shouldn't have. The lab followed protocol. You didn't. Silence. Courtney pressed her lips together. Dennis looked at Ernesto. Ernesto looked at Patricia with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger. Not disappointment. Something worse. The look of a person who has just realized they don't know who they're sitting across from. I let the silence hold. 1 second.
2.
3. Then I said, but that isn't the most interesting part of those results. Every head turned.
Marco looked at me.
What do you mean?
Keep reading, I said.
Page 4. He turned past the paternity confirmation, past the methodology page, past the consent declaration, and reached the family match report. He read aloud slowly, the way you read something you don't yet understand. Possible family match. Jamie M., age 36. Portland, Oregon. Estimated relationship. Half-uncle of Lily Atwood.
He stopped.
He looked at the page again. Looked at me. Looked at Patricia. Half-uncle, he said, as if translating from another language. That would mean he's my half-brother. Or Daniela's. Not mine, I said. Marco turned to Patricia.
Mom.
Who is Jamie? Patricia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. The pearl earring, the one she had been touching all evening, hung perfectly still. Even the nervous gesture had abandoned her. I don't know what. Margot's fork hit her plate. She stood up. 2 words. Trini, no. And the table understood everything.
Dennis spoke.
Margot, sit down. Ernesto rose slowly. His chair scraped across the hardwood floor, a sound that moved through the silence, like a blade dragged over stone. Trini, answer the question. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Margot. Margot shook her head, a small, desperate no. It was before you, Patricia said. Her voice broke. Not the practiced fracture of a woman performing vulnerability, a real break. The kind that comes from a wall that has been bearing weight for 36 years, and finally gives. Before your father. I was 25. I wasn't ready. I couldn't. You had a child. Marco's voice was flat. I was young. I was so afraid. You had a child, and you never told me. He was standing now. You never told Dad. Ernesto's hand found the back of his chair. He gripped it the way you grip something when the floor is no longer stable. 36 years. His voice was soft. Electrician's hands flat on the table. We've been married 34. It was before us. I was so ashamed. You told Margot. He looked at her. Margot said nothing. Margot knew. For 36 years, Margot knew. Ernesto turned back to Patricia. Something in his face, not rage, not grief, something slower. The look of a man who is recalibrating the entire structure of what he thought he had built. Were you afraid the whole time, Trini? The question landed and stayed. Nobody moved. Patricia cried. Real tears this time. Not the ones she deployed when Marco forgot to call on Sundays. These were the tears of a woman watching a foundation she built with silence collapse under the weight of her own plan. For one strange, small moment I saw her. Not the Patricia who had spent 7 years questioning my daughter's DNA. The 25-year-old girl who sat in a hospital in Hartford, signed papers, and walked away from a baby she was not allowed to keep. I understood that girl. My heart ached for her. Then Patricia wiped her eyes, straightened, and said, "This is Daniela's fault. She brought this out to humiliate me." The moment of compassion evaporated like steam off a window. Marco stepped toward her.
Mom.
Daniela didn't bring anything out. You ordered the DNA test. You planned this dinner. You slid that envelope across the table. He held up the pages and showed them to her. I think you need to see this. He said it slowly, the exact words she had used 20 minutes earlier. Isn't that what you said?
Well.
Now we've seen it. Patricia tried to sit back down, misjudged the chair slightly, settled on the edge. Margot reached for her. Patricia pushed her hand away. Courtney was crying, mascara running down both cheeks. She looked less like a 29-year-old and more like a child who had just discovered that the rules of her world were not what she believed. I didn't know about Jamie, she said. Mom told me Lily wasn't Marco's. She said she had proof. Marco turned to her. I have the recessive gene, Courtney. He took out his phone, scrolled through photos, found what he was looking for, and held it up for the table. An old photograph, early 1980s style. A young woman standing in a garden squinting into the sun. Red hair. I found this in the attic last year. In a box of old photos you told me were Aunt Margot's. He looked at Patricia. It's you, Mom. Around 19, 20 years old. Dennis leaned in. Patricia, is that you? Your hair was red. Patricia's hand, the one that always found the pearl earring, hung at her side. She raised it slowly, removed the earring, and placed it on the table. The small gold clip clicked against the wood. I started dyeing it at 19, she said. I always hated it. The red hair that supposedly didn't exist in the Atwood family had run through Patricia's veins since birth. She had buried it under 40 years of salon appointments and careful maintenance. And when her granddaughter was born with the same trait, she didn't see inheritance. She saw exposure. Courtney looked at me. I'm sorry, Daniela. I didn't know. I said, I know you didn't, Courtney. There was nothing more to say at that table. Ernesto picked up his jacket from the back of his chair, put on slowly, the way he did everything, with calm, with intention. I'm going to take a walk, he said. He didn't look at Patricia.
Marco spoke.
We're leaving too.
He looked at me.
Get Lily. I went upstairs. Lily was still asleep. Copper curls spread across the white pillow like small rivers of copper. I lifted her carefully. She stirred, pressed her face into my neck, and settled. I carried her downstairs. The house was emptying. Dennis had his coat. Eli was at the front door, keys in hand. Margot stood by the sideboard, arms wrapped around herself. In the doorway, Patricia stepped in front of Margot. Her eyes were swollen. Her carefully dyed brown hair suddenly looked like a costume. Margot, please. Don't leave like this. We can talk. Margot stopped and looked at her. You didn't want to talk, Mom. You wanted to perform. He held up the pages and showed them to her one last time. I think you need to see this. He said it once more, quietly, the words she had chosen, giving them back. We saw it. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Lily slept. The highway was empty. Sunday evening, most people already home. Streetlights passing overhead in a slow rhythm, casting amber bands across the dashboard. Marco spoke first. How long did you know about the test? 2 weeks. And about Jamie? 8 days. Why didn't you tell me? I had rehearsed this. Not the words, the logic. I knew the shape before I knew the sentences. Because you needed to see it yourself. If I told you in private, you would have called your mother. She would have cried, apologized, and asked you to keep it in the family. And nothing would have changed. He gripped the wheel, released it. Gripped it again. You're saying I would have let her get away with it. I'm saying the pattern was 34 years old. I couldn't break it with a conversation. You needed to see her act. Silence for 1 kilometer. Then, she dyed her hair for 40 years. The red hair was hers all along. I know. Another kilometer. I have a brother. A half-brother in Portland. He said the name like he was testing it, calibrating the weight of it. I watched his profile in the passing streetlights, the jaw Lily had inherited, the shoulders that carried more than construction materials.
He was processing.
Not shutting down, not deflecting. Processing. He reached his hand across the center console and found mine. He held it all the way home. He turned off the engine in the driveway, sat for a moment, and looked at me. Thank you, he said, for not protecting me from this. I squeezed his hand. That's not what partners do. The Monday after, Marco called Patricia. I need time. Don't contact Daniela or Lily. Patricia asked, until when? Marco said, until I'm ready. He poured a coffee and went to work. That was Marco, processing through doing. Tuesday, Ernesto called. He was staying at Dennis's house. I told your mother I need space to think.
His voice was steady.
No tremor, no crack. The steadiness of an electrician. 34 years of marriage. There's a lot of wiring to trace back to the source. Marco didn't respond. Sometimes silence is the kindest thing a son can offer. Wednesday, Courtney sent a message. 3 words first. I'm so sorry. Then a longer one. I should have questioned Mom instead of believing her. I got it wrong, and I know apologizing doesn't fix it, but I needed to say it. I replied, thank you for saying it. Thursday, Raquel sent Patricia a formal cease and desist letter. Any unauthorized genetic testing of Lily Atwood. Notice of potential civil action under Connecticut privacy statutes. Patricia called Marco in a panic. Marco told her to read the letter carefully and call a lawyer. Friday evening, Marco was at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He had been quiet all week, not distant focused. Building something in his head, the way he always did. I found him, he said. Jamie. He turned the screen toward me.
A school website.
A photo. Jamie Callahan, history teacher. Dark hair.
Marco's jawline.
The same slight curve in the nose. He coaches the junior basketball team. He has a 4-year-old daughter. He posted on the DNA platform 3 years ago looking for his biological mother. On the desk behind us, the manila envelope sat where we had left it Sunday night. Open. The document meant to destroy us had become the document that reconstructed the truth. Marco wrote to Jamie Saturday morning. He drafted it and deleted it 4 times. I watched from the kitchen doorway, said nothing. He needed to find the words himself. The final version was short. My name is Marco Atwood. I believe I may be your brother, half-brother, from Portland. My mother was born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1965. If you're willing to talk, I would very much like to. Jamie responded in 2 hours. I've been looking for her for 7 years. I never expected to hear from a brother. I'm open to talking. They scheduled a video call that evening. Marco set up the laptop at the kitchen table. I took Lily to the living room for her caterpillar program. At 7:15, I heard Marco say, "Hi, I'm Marco." And then a voice I didn't recognize, deeper than Marco's, calmer.
Hi, Marco.
I'm Jamie. I stayed in the living room, but I could hear them. After 20 minutes, I heard Marco crying. Not the quiet kind, the kind that comes from the deepest part of the chest, from the place most men spend their lives pretending doesn't exist. I leaned into the kitchen doorway. On the screen, Jamie was crying too. Same jaw, same eyes, 36 years of distance, and they looked like two versions of the same blueprint. Jamie spoke. She knows. My biological mother. Does she know you contacted me? Marco wiped his face. She knows. I don't want to cause problems. I just wanted to know where I came from. Marco answered, You're not the one who caused problems, Jamie. The one who caused problems is the one who lied. Lily tugged my hand. Mama, why is Daddy sad? I picked her up. He's not sad, sweetheart. He's meeting someone new. 2 weeks later, Patricia appeared at our door without calling first. The old pattern, the same lateral entrance, the same assumption that her presence was always welcome, except that the side door now had a new lock. A code she didn't know. She knocked at the front. I opened it. She was on the step in a gray cardigan, eyes red-rimmed. She looked 10 years older than the woman who had slid an envelope across the table with the confidence of someone who believed she was saving her family. I need to explain, she said. I was young. My parents forced me to give him up. I carried that guilt for decades. Marco responded, Then you should have handled that with honesty. Instead, you projected it onto my wife and my daughter. I was just trying to protect. You weren't protecting anyone, Mom. You were protecting your secret. Patricia looked at me. Daniela, please. Give me a chance. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had measured me for 7 years, cataloging my defects, poisoning the ground between us, stealing my daughter's DNA, planning a public execution at her own dinner table, and calling it love. Patricia, you're welcome to have a relationship with Lily. She loves you. We're not going to take that away. Hope flickered in her eyes. But it will be on our terms, on our schedule, and she will never be alone with you. The hope dimmed but didn't disappear. She nodded. Those are the conditions.
She didn't argue.
For the first time in 7 years, perhaps for the first time in her life, Patricia Atwood didn't argue. She stepped down from the porch, walked to her car, and left. 6 months later, Marco flew to Portland and met Jamie in person. They sat in a coffee shop for 4 hours. Two men with the same jawline, the same slightly crooked nose, 36 years between them. Jamie brought his wife Amelia and his daughter Sophia. Marco brought photos of Lily. In August, Jamie and his family visited Connecticut. Sophia and Lily chased each other through the sprinkler in our backyard while Marco and Jamie sat on the porch with iced tea and watched their daughters. I watched from the kitchen window. Two brothers finding each other in the middle of their lives. Patricia and Ernesto went to couples therapy. Ernesto returned home after 2 months, but set conditions.
Honesty.
Full transparency. No more locked drawers. No more buried histories. Patricia agreed. She stopped dyeing her hair. Silver started coming through with traces of red at the temples, the ghost of the girl she had spent her whole life trying to erase. Courtney apologized formally, in person and in writing. 3 handwritten pages, to both Marco and me. The most honest thing she had ever produced. Courtney's relationship with us was rebuilding slowly, the way anything worth keeping is rebuilt. One honest conversation at a time. Aunt Margot was not invited to Thanksgiving. Nobody mentioned it. The absence spoke clearly enough. In the manila envelope on my desk, I never threw it away. Not because I need it anymore, Because it reminds me that sometimes the weapon someone builds to destroy you is the same one that sets you free.
This is what I know now.
The people who work hardest to expose your secrets are usually the ones guarding the biggest secrets of their own. And the truth, the real truth, doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need an envelope slid across a dinner table with practiced hands.
It only needs time.
Time, and someone patient enough to let it arrive on its own. That is my story. One DNA test. One family table. One secret that had been buried for 36 years. And a woman who believed she was pointing a weapon outward, not knowing it had always been pointed straight at herself.